My name is Waverly Abrams, and for 2 years, I was the beating heart of Crescent Design Studio. I am, by nature, a person who finds comfort in order. My pantry is organized by food group and expiration date, my books are shelved alphabetically by author, and I can spot a misaligned structural support in a blueprint from across a room. This affinity for systems is what brought me to architecture in the first place, the art of creating beautiful, functional order out of chaos. My colleagues, with a mixture of awe and affection, called me the database because I held the intricate details of every project, every client preference, every municipal code in my head, a living archive of the firm's most complex work. My parents were both public school teachers, people who believed that diligence and integrity were not just virtues, but tools for a well-lived life. Their belief was tested when my father suffered a debilitating stroke during my first year of university. The sudden weight of medical bills and uncertainty threatened to derail my education. For a moment, I considered dropping out to help my mother. Instead, fueled by a quiet desperation, I did the opposite. I doubled my course load, took a night job at a blueprint printing shop that smelled perpetually of ammonia and ambition, and graduated with honors in architectural project management, with specializations in computer systems and urban planning. It was this unique combination of skills that caught the eye of Gregory Lawson, the founder of Crescent Design Studio. He saw in me not just a project manager, but a systems architect. He hired me 2 years ago with a single, ambitious mandate to modernize the firm's chaotic workflow. I poured myself into the task, designing and building a proprietary management system from the ground up. It was my magnum opus, an intricate digital ecosystem that tracked every version of a blueprint, every client email, every budget allocation, and every permit application. It wasn't just a database, it was the firm's central nervous system, and I was the only one who knew its every pathway. The results were immediate and dramatic. Project completion times fell by a third. Client satisfaction scores soared. At a company-wide meeting, Gregory pointed me out and said, he had Gregory's square jaw and confident posture, but none of his quiet competence or intuitive understanding of people. He had drifted through various departments at Crescent, marketing, client relations, even a brief, disastrous stint in material sourcing, leaving a wake of mild chaos and missed targets wherever he went. 3 months ago, in a move that felt more like hopeful succession planning than a sound business decision, Gregory announced his semi-retirement and promoted Tate to Director of Operations, my new, direct supervisor. The atmosphere in my professional life shifted overnight. Where Gregory had sought my input, Tate excluded me from key meetings. Where Gregory had praised my innovations in public, Tate began presenting my ideas as his own. The most troubling change was his approach to my system. When I scheduled a series of training sessions to document its functions and create redundancy, the words had felt like a compliment at the time. I see now they were the forging of a cage. It was during this slow-burning professional crisis that I met Karen. He was the calm, thoughtful man behind the counter at the city's permit and planning department. While his colleagues often rubber-stamped submissions with a weary indifference, Karen took the time to review them, to understand the intent behind the designs. Our relationship began over discussions of zoning variances and egress requirements, then blossomed over coffee, and finally deepened over quiet dinners where I could finally exhale the toxic air of my workplace. Karen became my sanctuary. What I didn't realize at the time was that in his quiet, meticulous way, he was seeing last-minute alterations made after the engineering teams had signed off, changes that seemed minor on the surface, but had significant implications for safety and integrity. 2 months after our first dinner, Karen proposed on a rainy Tuesday, not with a grand gesture, but with a simple, earnest question over a shared bowl of soup in our small apartment. We planned a small wedding on short notice. Part of it was our shared practicality. We were people who valued substance over spectacle. But another part, a subconscious instinct for self-preservation on my part, was a sense that my time at Crescent was becoming precarious. Of all days, to bring the axe down. As the reception swirled around me, a kaleidoscope of happy faces and joyful noise, I slipped away to the bridal suite. The room was opulent and impersonal. Gregory's voice was the first I heard. Waverly, it's Gregory. Call me the instant you get this. Tate had absolutely no authority to terminate your employment. There has been a terrible mistake. We need you. The submission deadline for the downtown revitalization project is Monday, and no one can get into your system. 6 more messages followed. The West Side development team is threatening to walk out. We can't find the updated renderings. The password Tate thought would work is useless. The entire firm is at a standstill. We are paralyzed. I sat in the silent room, the silk of my dress cool against my skin, and felt a sensation that was as unexpected as it was profound. It wasn't anger or hurt. It was power. For 2 years, I had built a system so complex that only I, its creator, could navigate its depths with unconscious ease. It was a system designed for efficiency, but in his arrogant short-sightedness, Tate had turned it into a fortress. He had canceled the training, ignored the documentation, and in doing so, he had made me the sole keeper of the keys. And now, on what he intended to be the worst day of my professional life, I held everything. Karen found me there, a ghost in a white dress, staring at my phone. He sat beside me, his presence a warm, solid anchor in the swirling chaos of my thoughts. He was careful not to wrinkle my dress. "There's something I should have told you sooner," he said, his voice low and serious. "The plans Tate has been submitting to my department, he's been altering them. After the structural engineers sign off, he makes changes, substituting cheaper, substandard materials, removing secondary safety features, things that would never pass a proper inspection if anyone knew to look for them." My blood ran cold. "That's not just unethical," I whispered. "It's fraud. It's dangerous." Karen nodded, his expression grim. "I've been documenting everything. I have copies of the original engineering specs and the altered versions he submitted. I was going to report it to the state board next week." And in that moment, the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. I understood the quiet, knowing smile he'd given me in the church vestibule. My firing wasn't a setback, it was a godsend. It severed my connection to the firm, absolving me of any legal liability for Tate's malfeasance, while simultaneously leaving the company utterly helpless without me. It was a perfect, unintentional checkmate. "What should I do?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Karen took my hand. "Nothing," he said gently. "Not today. Today we dance. Tomorrow, we fly to Vice for our honeymoon. And when we return," he lifted my hand and kissed my knuckles, "we will let the consequences unfold as they should." We went back to the reception. I danced with my husband, with my father, with my friends, a serene smile on my face. I felt light, unburdened. By the time we left in a shower of lavender and good wishes, I had 212 missed calls. Throughout our honeymoon, the calls continued. They became a distant. I deleted it without a second thought. 2 days later, another offered me partial ownership in the firm. I deleted that one too. Karen watched me, his expression unreadable but supportive. He understood this was no longer about a job or money. It was about something more fundamental. It was about respect. On our final evening, as we watched the sun dip below the horizon, "They're looking for someone who understands architectural submissions from both the private and public sectors. Someone who could create a new set of guidelines, new protocols for verification." The idea was a seed that germinated instantly in the fertile ground of my newfound freedom. By the time our plane landed back home, a comprehensive business plan was drafted on my tablet. "For the first time in 2 weeks," I answered. "Waverly. Thank God. We're in absolute crisis. The downtown project is dead in the water. Clients are threatening to sue. Please, just name your price. We'll pay anything." "I'm sorry to hear that, Gregory," I said, my voice calm and even. "But I'm no longer available for employment. I've started my own consulting firm." There was a pause. "My first client," I said finally, "is the Havenwood City Planning Department. I'm designing new verification protocols for all major building submissions." I heard the sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. He understood the implications immediately. My work for the city would inevitably unearth the fraud his son had committed. The walls were closing in. "Waverly, please," he said, his voice dropping. "Tate made a terrible, terrible mistake. He was jealous. Jealous of your competence, of your relationship with me. Let me fix this." "Some things can't be fixed, Gregory," I said gently. "Some bridges, once they're burned, just stay ash." I ended the call and turned to Karen. "You didn't burn that bridge. You just decided not to rebuild it for the person who lit the match." The following week, I began my contract with the city. My insider knowledge of how a firm like Crescent operated gave me a unique advantage. I could see the vulnerabilities in the system, the loopholes that someone like Tate could exploit. I designed a new set of protocols, a multi-layered verification process that cross-referenced architectural plans with engineering specs and material orders. It would make unauthorized post-approval changes nearly impossible to hide. As part of my process, the city commissioned an independent audit of all major projects submitted in the last 6 months. The fallout was swift and catastrophic. The downtown project was immediately halted, the contract revoked, and put out for a new bid. Tate wasn't just fired. He was facing a state board review that would almost certainly result in the suspension of his professional license. Crescent Design Studio lost millions in projected revenue and was hit with a barrage of lawsuits from clients and investors. The firm's reputation, so carefully built by Gregory over 3 decades, only a quiet sadness. Gregory had been a good mentor, a man who had given me a chance, and his only true failing had been a father's blind spot for his son. My own business, in stark contrast, was thriving. Within 6 months, Precision Protocol Consulting had contracts with 3 municipal governments in the region. I was hiring staff sharp, a charming but neglected craftsman with good bones and incredible potential. It needed work, but we had time. We were building a life together on our own terms, from the foundation up. Then, 1 year to the day after my wedding, a thick, cream-colored envelope arrived at my new office. The return address was simply G. Lawson. Inside, on heavy, personal stationery, was a handwritten letter. Dear Waverly, it began. I have learned that some debts can never be fully repaid, but that acknowledgement is the first step toward atonement. I have spent this past year not just trying to save my company, but to understand how I allowed it to stray so far from the principles on which I founded it. My son's actions were his own, but my negligence as a leader and a father created the environment in which they could happen. Tate has completed a professional ethics program and now works in a junior, non-managerial position at a small firm in another state, under strict supervision. He is learning, I hope, the gravity of his actions. Crescent has new leadership and new protocols. Not to offer you a job, I understand that bridge is indeed ash, but to ask if you would consider consulting on our new systems, to lend your expertise to ensure we never again fail the public trust. Whether you accept or decline, please know that my respect for you has only grown. You are right to stand your ground. You are right to protect the public. You are right to demand better. With sincere regret and admiration, Gregory Lawson. I showed the letter to Karen that evening as we sat on the porch of our half-renovated house, the scent of sawdust and fresh paint in the air. What do you think? I asked. Should I meet with him? Karen was silent for a long moment, watching the fireflies begin to glitter in the twilight. What would be your purpose in going? And maybe to see if genuine change is possible. For a person, for a company. Then I think you have your answer, he said. I scheduled the meeting for the following week. At Gregory's request, it was to be held at the Crescent offices. A part of me balked at the idea, feeling it was a step backward into a place of pain. But another part, the curious architect, wanted to see the new structure he claimed to have built. When I arrived, the building felt different. The tense, anxious energy was gone, replaced by a quiet, focused hum. The receptionist was new, and she greeted me with a deferential respect that was startling. Ms. Abrams, she said. Mr. Lawson is waiting for you in the main conference room. The door was open. I stepped inside and found not just Gregory, but Tate as well. He sat stiffly beside his father, his eyes fixed on the polished surface of the table. He looked smaller. The arrogant swagger was gone, replaced by a quiet, uncertain stillness. Waverly, thank you for coming, Gregory said, standing to shake my hand. His grip was firm, but he looked 10 years older. Stress had etched deep lines around his eyes. I sat across from them. Your letter was a surprise, Gregory. The education of this past year has been full of them, he replied. Replaced by something I couldn't quite name. It looked like humility. I owe you an apology, he said, his voice quiet and strained. What I did was unprofessional, it was vindictive. And it put people in danger. There is no excuse for my behavior. The words sounded as though they had been practiced, but the genuine shame coloring his face did not. Apology noted, I said. This company has been rebuilt from the foundation up. New safety protocols, new peer review processes, a new leadership structure. Tate is no longer in any position of authority. He is relearning this business properly, from the ground up. I opened the binder. It was a detailed overview of their new systems. It was impressively thorough. Tucked inside was a consulting contract, offering a substantial fee for my review and recommendations. We're not asking you to work for us, Gregory clarified. We are asking you to help us. to ensure we have truly changed. As I scanned the documents, I felt a shift in the room. Tate had stood up. There's something else, he said, his voice cracking slightly. He left the room and returned a moment later with a smaller, plain white envelope. He placed it on the table in front of me, his hand trembling slightly. Inside was a cashier's check. The amount was for the exact cost of my entire wedding, down to the last penny for the altar flowers. How did you know this number? I asked, a flicker of my old suspicion returning. Your wedding planner is a friend of my cousin's, Gregory admitted quietly. I asked her for the final invoice. I wanted it to be precise. Tate spoke again, his voice steadier this time. Consider it our gift to you. The one I claimed to be giving when I had no right. For a moment, anger flared. Did they think this was about money? That they could simply write a check and purchase absolution? But before I could speak, Tate placed a small USB drive on the table next to the check. This is yours too, he said. It's the complete architectural data for the system you built. All the back-end code, the passwords, everything. We managed to create a new front end, but it's never worked as well. It's yours. Take it, delete it, do what you want with it. It belongs to you. I looked at the check, then at the small, unassuming flash drive. It contained 2 years of my life. 2 years of my most innovative work. The work they had tried to steal, then had been paralyzed without. And in that moment, looking at the humbled father and his chastened son, I understood something essential about justice. Sometimes, you don't have to seek it out. Sometimes, if you stand your ground and hold to your principles, it finds you. I closed the binder and stood. I will review your proposals. My firm's fee will be triple what you have offered, and it will be paid in advance. My team will require complete, unfettered access and full transparency. Gregory nodded without hesitation. Agreed. And one final condition, I said, looking directly at Tate. You will personally complete every single training module my firm assigns. You will learn every aspect of ethical submission practices and regulatory compliance. You will become this company's foremost expert on doing things the right way, no matter how long it takes. The color drained from Tate's face, but he met my gaze and nodded. Yes, I understand. Then we may have a basis for a professional relationship, I said. I gathered my things and walked to the door, pausing with my hand on the polished handle. Oh, and Gregory? I glanced back at the table. The check is unnecessary. Seeing your son learn the value of integrity will be gift enough. I left them sitting in the quiet conference room and walked out into the afternoon light, my head held high, feeling not the thrill of victory, but the deep, quiet satisfaction of a foundation made sound. That evening, as Karen and I were laying new tile in our kitchen, a messy, satisfying job, I told him about the meeting. He listened, carefully placing a tile, then wiping the excess mortar away. So you're going to help them, he said. It wasn't a question. I'm going to help them help themselves, I corrected. There's a difference. The work began the following week. My team descended on Crescent like a team of auditors, and to my surprise, we were met with cooperation at every turn. Tate, true to my condition, was my primary point of contact. He was quiet, diligent, and endlessly patient. He sat through hours of rudimentary training, taking meticulous notes. He learned about shear walls and soil reports and the critical importance of a redundant safety check. He was, for the first time in his life, learning the business from its most fundamental level. About a month into our consulting contract, a new opportunity arose. A partnership was different from a consulting role. It meant tying my company's new, pristine reputation to their tarnished one. It was a risk. Why? I asked. Why not just let it go? Because that project was my dream, he said, his voice filled with a weary passion. It was supposed to be my legacy. I want to see it done right, to prove that we can be better. I thought about the community that had been promised a renewed city center. I thought about the jobs the project would create. And I thought about the ultimate test of my own principles. Was my work about punishment, or was it about building better things? I'll agree, I said, on the condition that Tate is the junior project coordinator. He will report to my lead manager. He will have no final authority, but he will be on the ground, every day, learning from his past mistakes in the most tangible way possible. There was a long pause on Gregory's end. He will be grateful for the opportunity, he said finally. We won the bid. Our partnership model, a creative design firm held to the highest standards by an independent compliance consultancy, was hailed by the City Council as a new model for public-private accountability. He learned to identify problems before they became crises. He learned humility. One afternoon, I found him poring over a set of revised plans, a deep frown on his face. "There's a discrepancy here," he said, pointing to a ventilation shaft. "The change is minor, but it affects the fire suppression system's efficiency rating. It's a shortcut. What are you going to do about it?" I asked. He looked up at me, his eyes clear and resolved. "I'm going to flag it, send it back to the engineers, and have a very direct conversation with the team lead who proposed it. There are no shortcuts. Not on this project. Not anymore." In that moment, I saw not the ghost of the man who had fired me, but the beginnings of the man he could become. The downtown project was completed 6 months ahead of schedule and under budget. It was a triumph of design, of engineering, and of integrity. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Gregory gave a speech, thanking the city, the workers, and our firm. Then he did something unexpected. He called Tate to the podium. Tate looked out at the crowd, at the gleaming new buildings and the smiling faces of the community members who would use them. "A few years ago," he began, his voice steady, "I almost derailed this project through arrogance and a lack of integrity. Today, it stands as a testament to the idea that it's never too late to learn how to do things the right way. And for that lesson, I have one person to thank." He turned and looked directly at me in the front row. "Thank you, Waverly. You didn't just save a project. You helped rebuild a company. And you gave me a chance to rebuild myself." As the crowd applauded, Karen squeezed my hand. I didn't feel a sense of victory over Tate. I felt something quieter, more profound. It was the feeling an architect gets when they stand back and look at a finished building, knowing that every line is true, every joint is strong, and that it was built to last. My story doesn't end with a dramatic confrontation or a triumphant revenge. It ends in the quiet hum of a thriving business, in the comfort of a home built on love and trust, and in the unexpected grace of a second chance, not just for them, but for my own belief in the possibility of change. I didn't set out to reform an industry or a man, but by simply refusing to accept disrespect, by building my own future on a foundation of my own values, I ended up doing both. And that, I have learned, is the most satisfying success of all.